Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have another one of our special guests. We have Shanay Watson-Whittaker. She is our political organizer and strategist and expert on all things political. And we're going to talk tonight about Oxford High School and the shooting, because the details that we've since learned about since the shooting are just mind-boggling. But let's get right to it. Good evening, Shanay. How are you?
Hey, Kim, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show today and bringing us some clarity.
Yes. What happened in Oxford on November 30th was very tragic for not only for Oxford, but for the state of Michigan. I mean, it really made it real. You know, we had Sandy Hook, we had what happened at Columbine years ago, and just to have it here in Michigan, it made it real. And the how proximity to violence and access to firearms, it's just real, and it still blows my mind that it's happened.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You're absolutely correct. So let me see if I can sum this up, because I want to pull us forward a little bit.
Yes.
It was indeed a horrible day, because let us not forget, 4 students lost their lives. They were murdered in cold blood. No matter what the reason is or was, it's not going to make that okay. You have a young man who evidently was having some issues, whether they were mental, whether he was being bullied, whatever it was, decided to bring a gun that his parents had purchased for him. His mother is seen on video and is on social media at a gun range, and they're celebrating. The day before the shooting, a teacher caught him on his phone looking up different types of ammunition. There was a meeting at the school with the parents and the school saying that this is unacceptable. The child needs counseling. If you don't get him counseling, I believe it was in 2 days, we're going to call Child Protective Services, but you need to take him home. The parents flatly refused and said, no, we will not take our child home. He has done nothing wrong. He's going to stay. And because of that decision,
the suspect appeared virtually in court as police described the shooting.
And this child killed 4 people. He injured several others. And I know there's so many details to catch up on in terms of what happened, just to refresh your memory. But in addition to that, we also learned the parents fled to Detroit right after their son was arraigned and charged with lots of counts. I believe it was over 12 counts or something. And he was charged with terrorism. This is the son was charged with terrorism. And then, you know, all the other different charges. I find it interesting because the story goes, the parents fled to Detroit. They pulled out or removed $4,000 from an ATM machine. I'm sorry, Shanay, I don't know what ATM machine they use, because I didn't know you could pull that much money out. Because usually, I mean, you can have that limit, but usually a machine won't even let you pull that out. So they pulled out $4,000, fled to Detroit, and were trying to get to Canada. They were going to flee to Canada. And and because the prosecutor and the police and everybody else is all over this, they have figured out who, or at least one of the people, I don't know if there's more because they haven't said, but there was a local artist who had an office or a studio space in downtown Detroit on the Lower East Side, where he allowed them, I guess, to go into his space from what we're hearing. But here's what gets me, and I've said this with my girlfriends. We already know that the parents didn't seem like they were all there, because one, as a parent, and Shanay, you have children, I have children, and parenting is rough. There are days, and I don't know about you, maybe Shanay, you were that parent that was like, oh, I got it together all the time. But there have been days where my children where my children, I was like, oh, these people, will you hurry up and grow up and get out of my house? Because I'm tired. I'm frustrated with you. I'm angry with you. But yet, you would never say, okay, you've done something horrible. And I don't ever want to be in these parents' shoes. But to see your children do something bad and then to abandon them and leave. And then while you're wherever you are, you trip the silent alarm and the police come and find you. I you know what, as an author of all these books, I can't make that up. I'm like, someone, if an agent read that, they would say, now, Kim, you got to make your people a little bit smarter than that. Shanay, help us make some sense of all of this. And then we're going to connect this to the Rittenhouse trial, because there are some implications in terms of whether or not people believe parents should be charged because they legally bought the gun. Because the question keeps coming up, well, what did they do wrong? What did they do wrong? And the prosecutor says they gave a gun to an unstable person. But help us make sense of this.
Thank you, Kimberly, for having me. What happened in Oxford was senseless, but then at the same time, you realize, we're both parents. Personally, when my children were 15 years old, I couldn't imagine buying them a gun, much less if that were to happen, to have that child posted on Facebook, number one, and number two, go out there and encourage that, that behavior. Also, what happened with the parents and them basically cutting and running and leaving their child alone, that says a lot about their values and their parenting techniques and skills as parents. I can't imagine if any of my children did something even remotely close to that. I couldn't imagine just running away and ditching that child, leaving that child alone to fend in a system that is basically stacked against him. So the parents doing that, it was just like an insight to their values, to how they parent and how they feel about their child as well. So that entire thing was remarkable. What's funny is that people, Oxford is actually closer to Flint than it is to the city of Detroit. And what's remarkable about it is, in order for you to go to the Canadian border, you need a passport or a real ID, and you have to be vaccinated. So we don't know if they were vaccinated. It seems from their ideology that, I'm just speculating here, that they're not the type to be vaccinated. We see they're very big supporters of the last president and conspiracy theories. So I wouldn't put it past them not to do that. And the irony is that Detroit had to use its resources, limited resources, to capture two people from the suburbs. When you think of crime, people automatically stereotype Detroit, but here you are, two fugitives. They ran into the city of Detroit and hid there. And again, used limited resources, Black resources, for their white privilege. They really shouldn't have had the opportunity to run. They had their attorney said that they would turn themselves in, but they did not. So if this was a poor Black couple from the east side of Detroit, let's say at 48203, 4205, I don't think they'd have the opportunity to run like these two did. And it is, again, remarkable and ironic that Detroit has to use its resources to capture these two, whereas there are people who need the police every day, actual victims of crime, instead of these perpetrators, allegedly.
Yes. And you're absolutely correct. And I want to touch on a couple of things, because one of the reasons I thought they came to Detroit is exactly what you said. They have limited resources. There's so much crime, no one will pay attention to us. And the exact opposite happened. And I said, wow, the irony that a lot of people will put Detroit in a spotlight and talk about all the negatives, yet it came forward and delivered justice where it hadn't been found anyplace else. Now, I did read really quickly I did read something that said they were turned away from being able to flee because they weren't vaccinated. I don't know if that's true. I think that's part of the rumor mill. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up, what do you make of the fact that they had hired high-powered attorneys for themselves, yet had a public defender for their son?
Again, it's values. People talk about values, and how you treat the least among these is a reflection of him. I mean, for them to hire Larry Nassar's attorney says a lot, and their son is left with a public defender. Sometimes, I'm not the one to say people shouldn't have children, but maybe they should have considered things differently when they had their son. Maybe they weren't ready to have a child, and to raise a child. And it sounds like this child has extraordinary needs that haven't been met. Again, coming up with $4,000 to flee instead of paying for your son's legal defense there's some audacity to that, and there's some hubris that you would think that the system is supposed to take care of your son, and you're not supposed to take care of your son. He's still a minor. Take care of your child. They have the obvious resources to give him the best defense that he needs to fight in court.
And you're right. So in terms of, what does this say if we are outside of the United States of America and we're watching this and we're listening to this, what does it say about America's judicial system and how laws are applied?
Well, number one, we're seen as like this gun-toting America country, that a nation full of gun-toting, freewheeling, wild, wild west folks. We're not seen as, the shining city on the hill. I hate to quote Reagan, but we're not seen as that bastion of freedom. We're, shootings are commonplace here. Violence is a part of our culture. I mean, it's always been since the first Euro colonialists set foot on this land, and since the Revolutionary War. So, that's nothing new. But at the same time, if you're on the outside looking in, you're asking yourself, what is going on there? Why are they doing this to each other? They have all of these resources, and yet they're killing each other. Why does a child have access to a gun? There are other parts of the world that actually made it harder, more restrictive for people to obtain guns, and yet they live peacefully. I mean, there's violence there, but it's not to the level that we have here in the United States. But then again, in our country, violence is a business. It's been a business since, again, the Revolutionary War. It pays to be violent in this society. So if we don't take the money out of violence, we're still going to have it here. So I hate to sound cynical about it, but that's just like racism. If we take money out of racism, it's no longer beneficial, and people will stop doing it. So,
and I think you're correct. And someone asked me this question, so I'm going to ask this to you. Do you think that these school shooters are trying to be famous? Because someone said to me that after Columbine, that every shooter after that is sort of trying to get that infamous fame, so to speak. And I thought, wow, that's kind of a twisted way to get fame. But I guess if you are struggling mentally, angry, racist, whatever it is, or even just hurting, that may be appealing to you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't want to do a psychological assessment on people and why they do it, but I do know that we do live in a culture that praises violence, no matter what we say. We see it on TV, we see it in our video games, we hear it in our music. So, it's already there. Again, this is a violent country. We can't run from that. We can't hide from that. And if people want to argue otherwise, the facts won't be behind that. What young people are doing right now, it happened in the 90s and it's happening now. For some people, they'll say it's bullying in schools. I was bullied in school, but I didn't turn to gun violence and whatnot. I did fight back, but with my hands and with my mind. And again, it's about access to guns. I don't know if this instance, if it's also about mental health care. It does seem like there's some element to that. The alleged perpetrator had scribbled, help me, and
Mhm.
scribbled like had violent drawings with that said with help me, people with blood and everything, and then that was ignored. Again, I also want to I don't like blaming, but the parents have a role in it, and so does the school. The school has a role in it too, because there was signs there, from that child, and I don't think that they took it too seriously. I mean, why would they let that child back in the school at all? Why would they give the parents an ultimatum? They know that this child has an history, and yet it was ignored. I guess it poo-pooed. The more and more we'll find out about it, I think the more it'll come to light that there was a pattern here that was either ignored or poo-pooed throughout the processes. And unfortunately, 4 babies from ages 14 to 17 will not see prom, will not graduate from high school, will not have children of their own or have families, or accomplish their dreams because of neglect and harm done to them because of the violence in our society.
Mhm. And you're right. So I have a teenager and I have a son that's under teenage years. And I have since learned that there is a TikTok challenge. So TikTok, for those that don't know, is a social media app, and it's called Slap a Teacher. And I was like, slap a teacher? What is that? And so my youngest son said, oh yeah, mommy, I've seen the videos, but it's stupid. Why would anybody slap a teacher? And then, there were other people saying that there's a shooter challenge. So today in my son's school, and I won't say what district he's in, however, he made a joke about shooting someone. So they, of course, have taken it very seriously. And local police were called. And so we're going through the process. The day after Oxford happened, a school in the same area that my children go to school, a young man decided to bring a gun to school. I'm not really sure what the circumstances were, but it hit the media and they came down really hard on that student, as they did on this student today that made the same joke. What does justice look like for this case, for the families? And what would you suggest that schools do moving forward to help navigate this new, well, I won't say new world, but to navigate this violent world that we live in?
Well, I don't think suburban schools are taking it serious enough. I know in urban schools that there are metal detectors. I went through metal detectors. I didn't like it. I felt like we were dehumanized. We actually had dogs, drug sniffing dogs and all of that in the schools. But I've never heard of the level of violence, like the school violence that we see going on in these suburban schools, and the school shootings. So there is something that has to be done there. I'm a firm believer in mental health counseling and looking at signs and making mental health counseling a part of the school curriculum. It shouldn't be, oh, let's go to your counselor. There should be counseling sessions already in school, already there. That's like, I won't say mandatory, but it's already in place. We don't staff our schools very well when it comes to mental health professionals. You may have one school psychologist in a number of district schools, and that's not enough. There's not enough investment in that. Even in the richer schools, the wealthier school districts, it's not enough investment in mental health care. But we also want to talk about access to guns. There are talks of the politicians talking about limiting access to guns, holding parents accountable for their children if they have access to guns and if they're not putting it away properly. I get that some folks think that that's taking it a level too far if you're a gun owner, but at the same time, somebody has to be held accountable. There is a right to bear arms, but there's also a responsibility with that. And you cannot abuse that right because you think it's okay. You can't. There are consequences, like those 4 babies getting killed and other kids getting killed in the area. I know in Detroit, a little girl was shot at 4 years old, shot in the stomach. just yesterday. So somebody's doing something. There's some negligence here, and we as a society have to hold ourselves accountable and say, is this the life we continue to want to lead? Do we have to live like this? What's going on? When are we going to finally say enough is enough? Or are we going to continue to do have the same dance that we always do? After a couple of months, it dies down. Maybe then next year, another school shooting and more kids are killed, and then we do the roundabout dance again. We did it with Columbine. We did it with Sandy Hook. We did it at the Pulse nightclub. We did it in Charleston with what happened at Mother Emanuel Church. It's just constant, and it's constant dance. And then you have all of these lobbying groups and powerful special interest groups that have so much money built into keeping the violence alive, keeping the society violent, that they don't care anymore. And they held so much political and money power in our government. So, and then we're just deadlocked. And it's, again, the same dance that we've always been doing.
Mm-hmm. You're right. There is money. There's power and influence. I always find it oddly quiet that the NRA really never ever comes to make a or says anything. And it's ironic because, as you said, people will say we have a right to bear arms, yet don't want the responsibility of that. I've been talking with both of my sons. They both had lockdown drills this week. Both were, of course, obviously for all kinds of reasons, because you can't get away from it. We're still talking about it. And they're nervous. And we had a conversation a couple weeks ago before this happened, that what happens if a shooter really does come into the building? Because my kids' school, they don't, even though it's an urban school, they don't have metal detectors. And so I was talking with one of the school administrators last week after Oxford. I said, are you guys going to install metal detectors? I said, because you guys don't do any type of searches. And one of the things that they said about Oxford is because of COVID, the reason why everybody had their backpacks is that the lockers were all shut or locked together, zip tied. So everybody had backpacks. And so, of course, this young man, it was easy for him. He could put his gun in his backpack and carry it around all day. And so when he got ready to do what he was going to do, it was right there. He didn't have to go to his locker and go get it. And, possibly could have ran into somebody where somebody could have run and said, oh, he has a gun or whatever. He could just do what he needed to do. And so I was explaining to my sons, there's a firehouse across from their school. And I said, get to the firehouse. I said, I love both of you. I said, and I pray that you will survive. I said, but I need you to get to the firehouse. I said, don't look for each other. I said, don't. I said, both of you go where you're supposed to go. And we pray that you both will meet up there. I said, because if you go look for each other, then that can make the situation worse, because then you're trapped someplace that you may not or should not be. So having said that, what are some things that Black America should take away from this? Because this has become not only highly political, but also racial, because unfortunately, school shootings have happened in a particular type of school. It's always been suburban or rural, not necessarily urban, meaning a school where it's highly populated with Black students. And so a lot of people will say, well, that's what they do over there. And I always tell people, I said, stop saying that. I said, because it could happen and you don't know. I said, because we'll overlook something and think that it won't happen because we'll feel like we're doing something different. But Shanay, tell us, what should Black America take away from this?
Well, there are two Americas, again, the point of privilege for the parents to just take off and, knowing that they were facing charges, that in itself is a testimony to the power of white privilege. I don't think Black parents would be allowed to do that. So that's one take I would say. Also, number two, then is the access to firearms. It's so immersed in our culture. but I don't think a Black child would get away with that because of metal detectors in urban schools. But I also want to let people know that even if you live in the suburbs, you're not like, that's not a silver bullet against and not being a victim of crime. You know, again, what happened in a school is a tragedy, but it happens all too often. So you can run from urban areas if you'd like, but there's also that possibility that gun violence will happen in your child's school, whether it's in suburban metropolitan Detroit or in a rural county, you know, in Michigan or other parts of the country. So it's not, the only solution is not to leave, or not to leave urban areas, or to separate yourself. I think just having a nationwide conversation about the impact of gun violence, whether it is a school shooting or whether it's quote urban violence, where it's you know, crime, robbery or whatever, or some kind of domestic violence, which is another problem in our community as well that hasn't been addressed. It needs to be discussed. Guns should not be the only option, you know, to settle a dispute. It should be no option. The only reason you should have a gun is to defend yourself, but not to, like, if you have beef with somebody. I think one of the things that people don't understand is the concept of death, the finality of it. There's times where I've been to court for people that I've known in my family, and you know, having people that were victims of gun violence, the perpetrator usually doesn't understand the finality of the, you know, the cause and effect. The effect is death for that person. They think, oh, you know, it's just me defending myself, it's me, or me protecting my name, it's me doing what I got to do. But they don't understand that the impact is not only on for the victim, it's their family, it's the perpetrator's family, it's the perpetrator themselves. So, you know, we have a violent country, and I don't know how all of us do it. I don't know how Black people do it. I mean, we faced state sanctioned violence in 1619 and we're still here. That's traumatic. It's really traumatic. And I would implore Black folk that therapy works, and it's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to preserve safe spaces. Even our churches is no longer a safe space, you know, because of what happened in South Carolina a few years ago, but it is okay to have safe spaces. It is okay to talk. It is okay to express your feelings. Violence should not be the only answer to a problem. It shouldn't even be the last answer to a problem. You know, we're all God's creation. If you believe in God, you do. If you don't, you don't. We all are greatest creations of all time. I think humans are, and you know, life is a gift, and we should cherish it and cherish other people. We can disagree with other people, but that doesn't mean we have to take them out and wipe them off the planet.
Well said, Shanay. Well said. And I always say, we never know what people are going through. Always give people a smile, give them a kind word, give them a hug if you need to, because you never know, that person may need it and you may need it too.
Amen.
We do live in a violent country, and this is 2021, and it's not funny in a humorous way, but in an interesting way, because George Floyd was 2020. We've seen Ahmaud Arbery. We've seen Breonna Taylor. The list goes on and on, because I'm drawing a blank of different people. We can always go back to Trayvon Martin. We can go back to Mike Brown. So many different people have succumbed to violence. Elijah McClain, you know, a young man who was simply going home, and police saw him and thought there's something off with this kid, instead of him just being an autistic young man. And then we have Oxford, where something was going on with this young man, and he didn't get the help that he needed, and he murdered 4 children while he injured several others. We do live in a violent country. Violent video games, violent movies, violent TV shows, everything you name it, that's what we do. I often say that when we're out and about in public, and you know, whether or not I'm going to the pharmacy, I'm going to Target, I'm going to the grocery store, or whatever it is. I remember a couple weeks ago, for my oldest son's birthday, we were at an apple orchard. at the checkout line, just getting our apples and some apple pie and some caramel corn. Folks started fighting at the checkout line, and I'm like, what is so when you say violent, we are. And violence comes in all forms. It's not relegated, as people would love to say, well, it's just Black people. Yeah, you are inherently violent. No. We can both say that neither one of us has committed a crime, been involved in anything nefarious or anything. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, nope, I'm not built for that life. No, thank you. I may watch it on TV, but that's as far as I'm going to go. And mental health is important. We need to treasure our minds just as much as we treasure our physical bodies. Treasure the brilliance that is our mind and treat it as such. Our mind is what keeps our body going, and one can't exist without the other. And I know you believe in God, and I believe in God, and I know everyone doesn't, and you've said that. But believe that there is a purpose for you here on this planet. And it does not involve violence. It involves something greater than all of us. And if we all could come together, how much better the world could be. So,
Amen. That's a sermon right there.
and as a mom, Shanay, and you know this, we sit there and we're like, but we worry about our children. And no matter if your children are 2 or they're 20 or 80, they are still your child. You will always be worried about them. I know people whose children are fully grown and they're like, call me when you get home. Like they have a whole nother house and a whole nother family. I know. And you talk to like, call me when you get home. They're like, Mom, I'm grown. Like, let me know that nothing bad happens to you. And it's just interesting that we live in this country. And as you said, that we survive. Like, well, you can go to the store, because when you think about it, some people go to the store and don't make it back.
That's right. That's right.
And we don't realize that. And, it's just one of those things that makes you think.
Amen. It does. And it hurts to think about. It's you never know. I have 2 sons, both of them are 21. And, I think about that all the time. One is in the Navy, even him, definitely him, because, we can break out into war at any time. And I don't know if my youngest one will come home, or my oldest son, he works every day, works 6 days a week, and don't know if he'll come home some days. And that's worrisome. Even my daughters, I annoy them. I have them on my phone, Google, I'm looking at them, but I still say, call me when you get home, because I want to make sure they're okay. And they're not dealing with the nonsense that's out here in the world, because all they want to do is live life and have families and enjoy themselves. And all of them do that, and they should have that opportunity, just like those 4 babies should have had their opportunity. And like you said, Trayvon Martin should have had that opportunity. Mike Brown should have had that opportunity. Breonna Taylor should have had that opportunity. And George Floyd should have had that opportunity as well as Ahmaud Arbery. So, and on with the exception of Mr. Floyd, all of them were either in their 20s and younger. They're all children. All of them were children, and they were executed. Yeah.
Absolutely heartbreaking. But that is a great way to end our podcast for this evening. Shanay, thank you again for coming on and helping us to make sense of it, and always breaking down the political landscape for us, because everything is political. Tell us where we can find you, how we can reach out to you.
Oh, your best bet is on Twitter. La Femme Negrita. It's La Femme, FEMME _ Negrita, NEGRITA. So definitely, if you can follow me on Twitter, that's where I'll be.
And you're on TikTok now. I saw it. You're on TikTok.
That's my twin.
Your twin? Okay, see.
That's not me.
I thought that was you. Okay. See, I messed up. That was your twin. See, now y'all gonna get me. But no, we can find you on Twitter. We can definitely reach out to you. Tell us that address again on Twitter.
Yes, I am La Femme Negrita. It's LAFEMME_Negrita, NEGRITA.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Shanay, for coming on and talking about violence in America, specifically the Oxford High School case and how it relates to all of us politically. We appreciate you. We know that it is December, New Year, the holidays are here, Christmas is coming, New Year's will be here. So we will see you in January for another wonderful topic.
Thank you. And it's also my birthday coming up.
That's right. So happy early birthday.
Thank you.
We
Thank
want to
you.
wish you a wonderful birthday and also a happy new year.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank
Especially
you.
the boys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you guys for tuning in to the Kim B. Davis Show. I hope that you will continue to watch before the end of the year. You know that you can find me as Kimberly Batchelor Davis on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, and TikTok. And you can, and Bachelor is spelled BATCHELOR. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can also hear the show on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Stitcher. You can find out more about me as an author at kimbdavis.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you will join us for our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent.